Welcome to the ninth part of the aggregate demand, aggregate supply, and government intervention lecture. This lecture series is prepared for the Middlesex Technical University Northern Cyprus campus. And in this part, basically, in the last part, I have already mentioned the the purpose of government intervention and the main tool, which is aggregate demand curve. Starting this part, I want to first mention a little bit why this government intervention is done. Well, especially if you consider the previous part, the economic system already has a self-correcting mechanism which will return the economic system back to the equilibrium. Well, the main reason is because, according to Keynesian view, basically, the self-correcting mechanism might be too long. Right? You might return to the old position. Potential output, but it might take long run. Might be, well, his famous quotation is, "In the long run, we are all dead," which might mean long run might be much longer than you think. I mean, might be maybe 5 years, maybe 10 years. Well, with this government intervention, you might return to the equilibrium point faster, maybe in, I don't know, 1 year, maybe 2 years, basically. So that's the reason why government intervention is justified. And now we will see, basically, since the main tool is aggregate demand, basically the government is shifting aggregate demand right and left. We already have seen, actually, the policies that are used to shift aggregate demand are fiscal policies and the monetary policies, and you might already have got the basic logic of those policies, but we will still see them again in a little bit more detail, specifically in the coming parts. But first, we will see when the government shifts aggregate demand into which direction, basically. So the potential policies, the common characteristics of the fiscal and monetary policies, in a way. And then we will see the details of the potential policies. Well, whenever there is a demand shock, actually, it is much easier to select the relevant government intervention. Well, if you have negative demand shock, that might be the case when, well, the demand might have shifted from an old position to AD1. In this case, basically, whatever that old position is, the new short-run equilibrium will be P1 and Y1, which will mean lower price level. Remember, if you have a stable inflation, this means lower inflation rate, not lower price level. But if you have started with stable price level, that could be a lower price level. And lower output level, which means you have a recession. But if you wait enough, basically the expected inflation rate will shift, change in expected inflation rate will shift SRAS curve, and in the end you will come back to this point. The potential output again, and lower price level or lower inflation level. But this process might take a long time. If you want to make this, the return to the potential output level faster, basically the government might find, in this case, you as the government might find the way to increase the aggregate demand level. And this could be made faster, and as a result, government may make AD to shift from this to from AD1 to AD2, basically. At each price level, more output will be demand, and then as a result, you will return the AD curve will shift to the point along the short run aggregate supply curve. Even in the short run, you might be able to return to the long run equilibrium point, basically, to this point. So you shift from AD1 to AD2, and by doing that, you return to the long run equilibrium, long run potential output level. In the short run, you are still on the same short run aggregate supply curve. There is a difference with this type of return to the potential output level and the self-correction mechanism. In case of self-correction mechanism, you return to a lower price level, while in this case with government intervention, you return to the potential output again, but you have a higher price level compared with the case where you have started. Remember, if you had stable inflation, that could mean also higher inflation, basically. So that might be a defect, basically. But of course, the recession itself might have decreased the inflation a bit. So in a way, decreasing inflation, increasing inflation, they might be offsetting each other. So that's still something the government should consider when they are applying this type of policies. This type of policies. So these type of policies, government policies that are actually that aim to increase the output level back to the potential level, are called expansionary policies. You expand your economy, basically, the output level, basically. So now we can go to the other case. But in case of positive demand shocks, basically what will happen. In case of positive demand shocks, well, you might have this AD1 and well, SRAS curve and the LRAS curve might be like this. So some factor might have shifted your aggregate demand curve to the right. Well, if you leave market by itself, SRAS curve will shift up and you will end up at the potential output level, but at a higher price level, which might be also higher inflation level if you have stable inflation. But instead you might have a government intervention, but in this case, government intervention should decrease the output level. So this is a Keynesian remedy, actually. If you had a output level above the potential, you should have a government intervention that decreases the output level. The governments use these policies not that much. They use expansion policies usually, but not that much this type of policies. But this is basically Keynesian remedy. This is the idea. The idea is you should basically decrease the aggregate demand level if the output level is above the potential. But then the governments are arguing, well, maybe the fact that we have a higher output level might mean that the potential has increased. Actually, we might have an actual growth rate. So whether the growth rate is an actual growth rate, which might mean an increase in potential output level, or it is just an overheated, it's an overheated economy, can be a debate in political arena and within the economics also. Basically. So that's why the governments don't like this type of policies, basically. But if you apply this type of policy, then you decrease the demand level. So AD will shift to the left. At each price level, there will be less aggregate demand. So in the end, you will return to this point, P2 and YF, potential output level, at a lower price level compared with the point where you have started, basically, which might mean a lower inflation level if you have a stable inflation. So in this case, self-correcting mechanism will bring you at the potential output level, but a higher price or inflation level, while government intervention brings you to a lower, again the potential output level, but at a lower price or inflation level. But in this case, actually, you can also wait the self-correction mechanism. I mean, maybe it's not that urgent for the government to decrease the output level. However, if the government wants to fight with the inflation, now it might need to decrease the aggregate demand, basically, so that price level will decrease, don't increase, basically. And that's the difficulty with fighting with inflation. Actually, you might need to decrease the output level, especially if you have a stable inflation. In that case, you might need to create even a recession first. I mean, if you have stable inflation here, you might need to create a recession and then wait the economy to self-correct itself so that the price level will fall to or inflation level will fall to a lower level. If you just create a recession by decreasing the demand by government intervention, then increase the government demand back to a high level, then you will basically return to the old point. So there will not be any effect on inflation. If the inflation was high and you wanted to decrease it, it won't work. So basically, you need to wait the self-correcting mechanism. Well, this happened in Turkey actually in 1990s and in the United States in 1980s, 70s and 80s. Basically, I mean, one way to solve inflation could be direct affecting the expected inflation rate, changing the expectations. But in both cases, governments have tried this. I basically mentioned we really want to decrease inflation, so don't increase prices that much, demand that much wage increase. But it didn't work, and in the end, government required to have a recession first to decrease the inflation level. At the time of Ecevit, this was the case. I mean, they decreased the inflation level, but it required a recession to do so. And in case of Jimmy Carter, again, this happened, which is in that case the recession is called Volcker shock, sometimes called engineered shock, basically. Lastly, let's see the stagflation case. Stagflation is a case when you have a negative supply shock. In case of a negative supply shock, basically, you have a, let's see it here. Well, here, for example, you have both an increase in the price level and a decrease in the output level. So you have a stagnation if you have growth, but then decrease in output level below the potential. The growth and the decrease in the growth increase in potential and decrease in the the fact that the potential moves to the right, but you move left to the potential might balance in each other, and you might have a stagnation, stable economic system, or recession also, but somehow stagnation is the term used there. And inflation, so the both are combined, and there is a word called stagnation. So in case of this case, in case you have stagnation, now since you are not able to move your short-term aggregate supply curve, there is no government policy in the Keynesian recipe to do that, basically. So your only option is moving the aggregate demand curve. But if you move aggregate demand curve to the right, this will create more inflation. If you more inflation, you will solve the recession, but you will have inflation in return. But if you move that's the case when you increase aggregate demand. If you move aggregate demand to the left, decrease the aggregate demand, and you will solve the inflation, but you will make the recession even deeper. The time you need to return to the equilibrium point, ultimately you will return by shifting short-term aggregate supply curve, will be higher, longer. So that's the problem of the stagflation. So stagflation is the case when Keynesian recipes at least don't work. And this has happened in 1970s in the United States, and 1970s was the time it has triggered a shift from in the economics from Keynesian economics to the neoclassical views, which is formed under a special school in macroeconomics called neoclassical school. So this is basically the case of stagflation. Although still, I mean, macroeconomics consists of Keynesian policies and their critiques, basically, mostly. I mean, there is no that much of a neoclassical receipt, special receipts. Monetary policies also originate more or less from the Keynesian views. Neoclassicals like the monetary policies more, but that doesn't mean their receipts. Anyway, next time we will see. Now we will start to see different type of. Well, let me tell you. If you have a policy that is, as in case of the positive demand shock, decrease the output level, that type of policy is called contractionary policy. So note that. So if you increase the aggregate demand with a policy, that's called expansionary policy. If you decrease the aggregate demand through a policy, that's called a contractionary government policy. Of course, we might have contractionary fiscal policy, contractionary monetary policy, expansionary fiscal policy, expansionary monetary policy. All four combinations are possible. Now we will see other constraints on related to both of these policies, but we will see it in the next part. See you in the next part.